I didn't know that it was that deep and that moving. But what's the other side of it? So you said you leaned on certain aspects to get out of it. How do you climb out, and how do you look at self-care now?
How I climbed out was I wasn't asking when I was going to get out of the hospital. Didn't ask. Didn't want to ask. I need to get the nugget upstairs right to create a plan for me to, which goes back, you're gonna love this connection. To create a plan for me when I got out of the hospital, whenever that was, to implement the plan that I was going to do. And that plan goes back to what we talked about. Kata was, you did it every day, consistent. That mindset of that it wasn't physical, it was mental, that says, how do I get past this when I get out of the hospital? Whenever it is I get out of the hospital. So after the first week, after the first situation in my liver, I had said to myself, I'm not going to ask when I'm going to get out of the hospital. I'm going to take this time to get mentally tough.
You are and will always be your most valuable asset. Welcome to the Meaning Podcast. I'm Nigel Franklin, a CPA, MBA, and a certified emotional intelligence coach. Join and stay with me for a series of inspiring conversations with individuals embracing the ups and downs of life. Gain insights and perspectives into how you can lead a happier and more fulfilled life while exploring the importance of emotional intelligence to navigate the challenges and opportunities that come your way with greater ease and resilience.
So for this conversation, we have David Lipscomb, the CEO of CIS Training Systems and a thought leader in the diversity, inclusion, and equity space. Welcome to the show, David. David, I am super excited to have you. You're a part of the initial episodes of the show because you're formative, your contributions, your support has been formative into me being in this place today. When I say formative, the first few clients that I've had, and you've given me access to your team and your network. Absolutely. So through that, I've had the chance to coach or do EQI, work with individuals in Japan, London, awesome. Canada, and also here in the US. I appreciate you for making that possible, for seeing the value in it, that you would be able to invest or let me have access to the group. Thank you in the most heartfelt way. Awesome. So let's start. Just have our audience get to know a little bit about David. Who are you? Who is David Lipscomb? Floor is yours.
First of all, thank you, Nigel, for allowing me to be a part of this success that you've built, and definitely unique things moving forward for you. I'm very proud of you and what you've accomplished thus far. Hello, folks. David Lipscomb, the CEO of and head coach at CIS Training Systems, and a thought leader in the space of DEI. Been in the space since 2003 in diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think what that has done for me is really shown me a unique value of what people can do and what they can show. I'm also a cyclist and martial artist as well. I've been in the martial arts world since 1987. Oh my goodness, since 1987. I had to think back at that. Since 1987, achieved my black belt in 1993. Switched from one style to the next style around getting my brown belt in full contact stick fighting. And what you'll find out in my conversation with you today is this holistic approach of what I've learned as a practitioner of martial arts and also an HR executive in a large financial services firm when I was doing DEI work back in 2003 to 2008. I think what has really transformed my thought process is how do I take those pieces that I've learned and apply them and share those with other people. And I think the unique thing that will have an option or the capability of seeing how these pieces mix is EQI was the driver for me. And I took my first EQI with Coach John in 2003 and was blown away by the data. And so how can I take this data and really measure it and mold it to something that's valuable for me, but valuable for other people? And so where you and I are connected, I see the unique pieces from an athlete perspective of being a head coach at a cycling platform of something I've built for 16 years is how do I take an athlete and help them see the bigger picture? It's just not about turning the pedals over. It's about how do you turn the pedals over and how you think about turning the pedals over. I think that's the case.
I like to talk about thinking. Which usually gets me in
Yeah.
trouble because sometimes I spend way too much time thinking. But that's coined the phrase bias to action. But I like when you're saying you talked about cycling and you talked about martial arts. How are those things formative? What are the cornerstones of those things that kind of lights that fire for you, that you've developed an online presence? You've been forward thinking in this space because you had the idea of being online before
anyone else did.
Right, before the pandemic. What are those things that you would say were formative into kind of who you are here? So the martial arts stuff, are they martial arts and cycling? How are those contributing to what's driving you forward today?
Oh, that's an amazing question because they're both very linked. First of all, it's about mind and body. Okay. Both of them create this unique synergy between the two. Mind and body is super important. So I think a lot of times when we go through different programs, we just think about the body and say, what can the body do? If you don't have the mindset, the body doesn't perform to its fullest. So I'm a total advocate of that. So coming up in the martial arts environment, that was one thing that I learned from that is how does the mind drive the body? And that was told to me every single day. And I think, and I'll always remember this. My martial arts instructors will always say this to me. It says, David, you need to relax a bit. Because I was very tense and very intense in the work that I was doing, being a practitioner. And I think it made a very clear distinction between how to relax and how to truly show flow. Took me years to understand that. So getting to my black belt was a mindset change and focus on how do I utilize this stored energy. And a lot of stored energy is the way your brain thinks, and the body produces whatever your brain thinks and produces what you do. And from that point, that's what all I teach is I tell people, here's how you can become the best you can be by just relaxing.
So I think there's so much power in just letting go. You can't fully embrace any process in your experience if you're holding on too tight to something from the past. I like the flow concept. I guess you hear a lot of it, but I'm going to go into connecting it to the bicycle. So what was your introduction to cycling? And then kind of let's roll that forward to where you are now.
The introduction to cycling through martial arts was part of my cross training.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I lived back in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania back in 1988. I moved to Pennsylvania in Phoenixville in 1988. And one of the things that I was doing all the time was I would ride my bike from my apartment to my martial arts instructor, which was 13 miles away. That's the only way I could get there. So a lot of that transformation of how can I take this fitness that I've gained to my advantage. So when I was sparring with other people, I would always get them because my endurance was a little higher than theirs. So I would last longer than they would. So I found the unique ability to say, how do I take this energy that I've created and showcase that and do things a little unique. And I was pretty damn good at it.
That's cool though. We think of fitness, but we don't think of it as creating energy to fuel our lives. It's a differentiated view. And it's not often appreciated in that way. You started cycling the 13 miles each way. I'm sure it was uphill both ways as you tell the story.
Absolutely.
Right? But so then what's the growth in that? Because I think you've put a hurting on me in some cycling sessions and I still don't like you for that. But
you still love me.
I think you in that same mindset space, I come from a track and field background and where I suffered 15 seconds and I was done. If I'm jumping, I'm not suffering at all. My mind wasn't set up to embrace suffering or embracing the suck. So you're cross training on the bike and then you found what was the evolution of that?
It's interesting you asked that question. A lot of what I've learned, it is this, how can I say this? When we talk about mental toughness, so that's all you learn. The majority of what you learn in martial arts is how to stay centered. A lot of that centering action and energy, when you put it on the bike, it's a unique and very powerful thing. A lot of times people, and I'm sure we're going to go into this conversation as it relates to EQI as well, but I think one of the things you'll hear, and I'll share, is this mental focused intention of being a martial artist, just goes from not just being a practitioner, but also at your job, also on the bike, everything that you do. So it's not being cocky. It's being sure of your ability. It's not being prideful. It's not being an ego, but it's also understanding that you have this thought process and this mind of control that supersedes.
Yeah.
So people ask this all the time. So yeah, I have 70% physical, 30% mental, but the other 30%, it's 130% of true self is the spiritual side that you have inside your will to succeed. Martial artists get that. So when you get to a level of black belt and higher, this whole level of this 130% of you really see it.
That's the first time I've heard the 130% portion of it. The first part was you connected the mind and body, which I believe are the engine and also the fuel, if you will, or the vehicle and the engine. And then you talked about the spirit, or that, and I would say that's the fuel that keeps you going. But I've never heard that concept or connecting it in that way. Yeah. But it seems like you've taken the concept and then you've actually applied it to your life. Yep. And then you've gone out and you've done it for others as well.
Yeah.
What motivates that?
The will. Okay. We got to go back. So my mom passed away in 2005. All right. Bless her heart. She's an amazing woman. But what she showed me and told me and taught me was, son, you have this skill. You have this ability to connect with people like no other person. You have to share that with people. You can't reside on this earth and not share what you know and how to influence people in an environment that helps them grow and develop. So I took that to heart. I really took that to heart. And a lot of the things that I've learned in the past, my job, my career, some good, some bad, of course. We're all going to have our ups and downs. But for me to share my thoughts and expertise with people who want to listen, I'll share what I know. And it's been very successful in that people can see how to transform one, how to break through barriers too, and understand, hey, you know what? Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And that's what Farr said. But to really get a grasp of life overall. And there's some other things too I can share with you a little later. Some very defining moments in my life have made it very clear why I do what I do and who I do it for.
It's one of the things is like rarely hear of living that connected or integrated life. What were some of the challenges when you're presenting this? I know that everyone talks about embracing different, but different is different. Different makes people uncomfortable. So you're coming up with an idea and I'm connecting martial arts and cycling. I do believe that's seeing the whole person, and we can come back to that later on. But what challenges did you have in evangelizing or putting your ideas forward?
The challenge was me.
Oh, wow.
The challenge was me. I so remember the day. I can remember the day it happened. Okay. It was in August of 2013. Okay. I can tell you when it happened. So I was sitting in my apartment. And after I left the organization that I worked for a bunch of years in the financial services firm, I had to make a choice. It's either I go back into corporate America or I start my own thing. And it's in between. So the challenge was me being in between and on the fence. You've heard that phrase before, being on the fence. But the unique thing was, okay, I'm going to do this on my own, but I'm going to still look for jobs online. What are you going to do? It's either you're going to look for jobs online or you're going to do your own thing. And the day I made the choice to break through my own barrier, to say, no, I'm going to get my own thing and try my own thing, made the biggest difference in my life, period.
So what was that barrier?
The barrier was confidence. Although I learned confidence in martial arts, I just didn't tap into that resource and that understanding. I had to go outside myself.
We actually talk about it, or you hear it talked about, is limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
So what was that limiting belief? So what obstacle did that lack of confidence created?
What if I don't make it? What if I don't do it? What if I can't pay my bills? What if I can't? What if I can't? What if I can't? I got to the point where stop thinking about what if, go do.
Right.
And figure it out.
I love that. Stop thinking about what if and go do. Because you have to be biased to action, some forward action to move you closer towards your goals. By standing still, you're not actually goal seeking. You're actually just standing
still and looking around all day.
And looking around. And that's when more of the limiting beliefs comes in. And that's where I think I was actually talking to a friend about this, is the confirmation biases that you'd have that pops in when you give yourself enough time to just think. So help the audience know, how did you get outside yourself to say, okay, this is the work I need to do? The mantra, if you will, the Me Inc. is awareness plus action equals progress equals growth. So what was your process to overcome those obstacles, those limiting beliefs?
Number one was to as my mentor would always say, take a pregnant pause and take a step back and look at the big picture. What is it that I wanted to do? Didn't know what it was, but if I don't know what the picture might look like, how am I supposed to go towards that picture? So that was the first piece that I had to come to understand and come to grips with. That was one. Number two is surround myself with the people who I trust. Because those are the people who will tell you the truth, but also support you when you make the good and bad decisions. And I think that was number two. Number three was just taking a commitment and ownership towards me. You know what I'm saying?
I'm smiling because, again, that is exactly the conversation, the same me Inc. concept, right? You are the most important corporation.
Yeah.
You are the most important asset. You are the most important everything to you. So the commitment, I like that. The commitment to me. That's so powerful.
Yeah, the commitment to me. And it's not being braggadocious or anything like that, but it's I have to feel good about me. I have to feel good about me. Because who else is going to feel good about me? So I have to feel good about me. So
it's amazing though. One of the things that we talk about in the EQI space is checking in with yourself. Because on the days that you don't feel good about yourself, you're not going to perform as well. I want to just go back to the value of the pregnant pause, right? Yeah. So to orient yourself in the direction that you're going in and surrounding yourself by individuals who would support you, but not just support you but by being your truth tellers, but by also supporting you when you fall down. And then that commitment to me, I'm like smiling because those are the things that you learn over time. How do you accelerate that growth? Like you're at that space now. How do you help someone to accelerate that? So I'm learning it still. I'm trying to be committed to me every day. I'm trying to surround myself with the right support group. But it's still a long process. How can you, as a coach, as a performance coaching, and I think that's the one big thing we've talked about a lot lately, how do you help someone get that accelerated?
Wow. Great question.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of pieces to this. And this is all grounded in martial arts philosophy. It's drive, it's focus, and it's confidence. Everybody has drive, right? Everybody has a drive to do something. But a lot of times people don't know how to commit and or have confidence to do it. So through that, there's a level of focus that needs to be heir apparent to get to this point of confidence building. So if we don't have focus, we can't build confidence. And I think those are the top three things. And there are three other ones that I'll discuss maybe in the longevity of our conversation. So if we're not focused on something, how do we expect to build confidence if we're not focused on something?
Yeah.
Perfect example. It's going to tell you, most programs don't tell you to focus. They just tell you to do. They just tell you to do. They don't have you focus on anything.
That's interesting. If you don't understand what you're working towards, like you're not just going to go out and do something without understanding what am I supposed to be learning? What skill am I supposed to be acquiring? Because success doesn't happen by chance.
Correct.
So that just dive back into that focus point. How do you impart that? How do you see it in your life and how do you impart it to others?
Yeah. I'll talk about imparting in others and then I'll tell you about me. So here's what my program offers. From the very beginning, I don't care how good you say you are, how strong of an athlete you say you might be, but if you don't know what behavior is, how to create better training behaviors, your focus is off. Because at the end of the day, then you're going to fight me about thinking something more than I know.
Okay. Being coachable.
And that's super important. So having EQI, perfect example is you have to learn and be okay with someone telling you, hey, you know what? This is the real talk. It's real talk. So what I share with people to move them along the continuum is to say, okay, the easiest workouts you're going to do are the hardest ones because it was going to require tremendous focus and attention to detail. That's what I learned in martial arts. All basic principle training, all these concepts and understanding around philosophy of body mechanics. I'm going to get this, that, and the third. But if you're not focused on the detail, what else am I going to tell you to do? Because you're going to then say to me, oh, I can do it better or I can ride harder. That's not what I asked you to do. I asked you to follow the directions. So that following the directions builds focus. That focus then builds confidence. Confidence builds drive and vice versa. It goes up and down the spectrum.
Before I jump in with my excitement, then how about you and your self-regulation and your self-leadership?
How am I supposed to share? How do I say this? How am I supposed to tell somebody to do something if I'm not doing it?
That's interesting, right? Because I joke about the concept here came out of me searching. And I'm the guinea pig, so I'm not going to tell someone to do something unless I've lived it, because that's how you truly believe in it. So you're saying you've lived those experiences, and that's the mantra. Yeah.
So when I told you earlier that the defining moments, that was one of those defining moments. Is if I'm going to be a coach and share things with other people, I have to live that life too. I have to live that understanding, that mantra as well.
Part of some of the ink that I have, right? And everyone's always surprised that I have it, but it has motivation, commitment, self-confidence,
There it is,
and self-control. And some of the things that I think now that I'm connecting the conversation back to some of the conversations that we had and some of the things that I've learned through, is that everyone will always look at me and what are you doing? Because I was always doing something different. But when race day came, then it actually showed up. So it was actually preparing for something. It's like acquiring skills to prepare for. I'm just connecting the dot back to that same, how do you use your motivation and drive to ensure that you're committed, but then the focused application of behaviors, of thinking over a long period of time. And that's why I smiled even when you talked about the continuum. Because nothing is in a microcycle. I think in many instances in life, you show up and you want results immediately, but it's not that, right? That's cool that I had a golf lesson last night. Someone that I took my first lesson with him almost 20 years ago. And the skills acquisition part of it, when everyone else in the wintertime, everyone else is saying it's cold outside, I would go take lessons with him.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But that's why everyone else is sleeping. I'm working. Just in how my brain works. It's cheaper in the wintertime because not everyone else is out there. I had a lesson with him last night and he was going back to the initial. So we're talking almost a 20-year span of actually applying the same concepts over and over. But there are still things to learn. So last night I learned things that I thought I understood. But because I'm a student of life, because I have that commitment to wanting to be better, to understanding it, you still keep learning and you still keep growing. And that's the really cool thing. So many people find it weird that I still will seek out coaching, but I'm not an expert on something. So if you want to get better, you need to speak to an expert.
To speak to somebody.
And you need to tap into someone else. So how do you think about, you have ideas, you putting it out into the world? How do you think about your growth and your development and how, because you're helping others, back to that same putting your
me first.
You're putting your oxygen mask on first.
Yeah.
How do you care for you? Like, how do you?
Okay, let me go back and then I'll go forward. So as a martial artist, you learn what they call kata, right? Kata is a floor exercise. And you do these floor exercises over and over and over and over again. What does that do? What does that do for the individual? What that does is it creates this pattern and consistency of movement. So not just physical movement, but also mental movement. So how do I take care of me? I could be at a fault of mine, but I'm very focused on moving me forward. It's not being prideful, but I have a drive and a focus to achieve, because that's what's in my core of who I am and who I am as a person, and how I share that mindset and or drive with other people who want to learn it, who want to understand it, who want to be a part of it. So let's go to the middle now. It's when people go through my program and the training program of CIS Training Systems, the majority of the people that stay on my program are for 5, 6, 7 years. Why? Because they're so focused in on creating change for themselves off the bike than they are on the bike. And same thing with the martial artists. We get to green belt training. So you go from white belt, yellow belt to green belt. Green belt is about understanding how to utilize the principles of weapons training. I utilize the same type of principle on the bike. It's utilize the bike as a weapon. It's the same. Don't allow the bike to ride you. You ride it. Same thing in weapons training. Don't let the weapon, you utilize the weapon for what it's supposed to do. So this cross mindset of clarity is what keeps driving me, how I move things forward for myself.
And what about when you bump into obstacles?
Oh, wow.
And that's the same thing, right? Because nothing's is ever, and the themes probably as we go through the podcast, you'll always hear the same thing you learn. Nothing's ever is going to be as good as it be, and nothing's ever going to be as bad as it's going to be. How do you approach the obstacles? And I know we touched on it just briefly before, but what about the obstacles for you?
Okay, this is defining moment number 2.
Right.
Okay, here it is. So this is hard to talk about, but it's going to be very purposeful what I'm about to say. So in May of 2015, I got hit by a car on my bicycle. Okay, and wasn't that bad. Right? Hit the broadside of a car, great, no big deal at the moment. But 38 days later, it was a challenge for me because I spent that amount of time in the hospital. So the defining moment for me was to understand that you know what, I have to be crystal clear on how I get through this. And in that process was more not the physical stuff, it was all the mental. And I had to dig back to my martial arts training.
You know what? That's one of the days I wasn't riding with the group because that's how
I remember that. That's right.
But actually, think about it. I think for the audience to actually appreciate what, I think you glossed over what it was. No, but it's that you were riding at above 25 miles an hour and someone made a U-turn right into it and you went through the windows.
Yes, I did.
So I know it's probably hard to talk about, but it's if you just gloss over it and you had a lot more issues. So when you say so to really understand how far out of something you have to climb, it's important to
get to the context
and the depth of it. So if
you're
saying 38 days later, but if you don't mind,
I will share
to share a little bit with the audience about that, because that is a
huge defining moment.
And I think that's what happens in there are moments that you are faced with something that you don't see coming. And that's when you have to lean on or learn new life skills to move you from that point onward. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit more.
All right. Week after my birthday, and I had my group of people who I coach, and Nigel would have been there that day, actually. I had invited you to be at that ride. And you didn't show up, which was fine. It was what it was. So we were on the way back from 9W up in the Nyack area, going back into Fort Lee. And there was a lady who was coming northbound and I was going southbound. And I was probably doing 25 to 28 miles an hour. She cut in front of me and there was nothing I could do. There's nothing I could do. So I ran into the broadside of the car, totaled the car, hit it that hard, totaled the car, went through the windshield and found myself on the ground, unconscious. And I saw it and I could still see it in my brain. And this is 2015 now. I could see it. It's clear as day. I saw the car. There was nothing I could do. Braced for the impact. And next thing I knew, I woke up in the hospital. So let me give you some more of the story here. Back in 2012, I don't think you even know this, so I'll share this with you. Back in 2012, I had a stroke. 2012. On April 24th, on my son's birthday. Okay?
That's young to have a stroke.
Yeah. I was 40 years old.
Oh, wow.
40 years old. And I had a stroke, had a DVT, which is a deep vein thrombosis in my left calf, and traveled from my calf up into my heart and into my brain. Okay. So let me just share with you the impact that had. If I was not in the best shape of my life, we would not be talking today. That was really the first defining moment of my life. It was, how do I deal with this? I'm in the best shape of my life and I can't figure out what the heck's going on with me. Couldn't talk, bewildered. I found myself leaving my apartment. My wife at the time was at work and I think she was on the train and she wouldn't have got my call anyway. So I walked to the hospital. It's a 5-minute walk. Took me 45 minutes to get to the hospital because I didn't know where I was going because I was that messed up. Got into the triage environment and the nurse said, "What's going on with you? You seem a little weird. What's going on?" I said, "I think I have a bad reaction to Robitussin because I had a cold." But that cold was me having the stroke.
Wow.
Was me having a stroke that I didn't know what was going on it was just really weird. I spent 9 days in the hospital after that and got back out on my bike on the 10th day. But I didn't want to quit. I didn't have quit in me. Okay. Mm-hmm. So let's go back to now this accident. So being that I had the stroke, I'm on blood thinners. To keep my blood at a certain level, so ensure that I don't clot. And the third, after this, as the accident happened in 2015, they had to ensure that I didn't bleed out. So had to pump me with plasma right at the accident and rush me to the hospital where I had all of these issues. My nose was messed up because of when I hit the broadside of the car. A shade of glass sheared off the front end of my nose. So my nose wasn't there. It was crazy. I broke 9 ribs and 7 days later, had a lacerated liver, didn't know it.
Huh.
And I was bleeding internally.
Holy shit.
Bleeding internally. And I was like, what's going on here? I don't know what's going on. So every week it was something different. Every week was harder and harder. I had 3 liver surgeries. 2 of those liver surgeries and or cleaning of my internal body was actually at the bedside while the doctors were standing above me while I was watching it.
Oh, wow.
So this mindset that I have, and now you get to know more about me and why I think the way I do. There's nothing that I can't get over because I went through that. I went through this level of, and you're going to hear it, you hear it in my voice. There's nothing that I cannot do because I've been through hell and back. 38 days in the hospital, 9 broken ribs, all of these liver surgeries, and at the same time trying to ensure that I wasn't bleeding out because of my blood. I had to have a certain level of my blood.
Yeah.
There it is.
I didn't know that it was that deep and that moving. But what's the other side of it? So you said you leaned on certain aspects to get out of it. How do you climb out, and how do you look at self-care now?
How I climbed out was, first thing clearly was the first thing I had to do. I wasn't asking when I was going to get out of the hospital. Didn't ask. Didn't want to ask. I need to get the nugget upstairs right to create a plan for me to, which goes back, you're gonna love this connection, to create a plan for me when I got out of the hospital, whatever that was, to implement the plan that I was going to do. And that plan goes back to what we talked about. Kata was, you did it every day, consistent. That mindset of, that it wasn't physical, it was mental mindset that says, how do I get past this when I get out of the hospital? Whenever it is I get out of the hospital. So after the first week, after the first situation in my liver, I had said to myself, I'm not going to ask when I'm going to get out of the hospital. I'm going to take this time to get mentally tough. Because if I worry, if I stress, if I show any type of level of, not being positive, doesn't bode well on recovery. So how do I take care of self-care now? Is I have to pay close attention to my blood. I have to do it all the time. And I do a lot of flying. I go all over the United States for the work that I do. So I have to be very clear on taking my meds. It's important. So I ensure that I don't clot. I get rest and recovery. I have an app called Whoop. I did a partnership with them. I also work at Bicycling Magazine. I do some articles for them as well. And one of the things that we did was for Whoop, which is a rest and recovery app. So I get to see how much rest I'm getting, and I pay really close attention to that. And when there are days, it's just so interesting. When there are days when I have to work hard and do things in a long term up until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning to get some projects done, I feel it. My body does not respond well. So I have to take those pregnant pauses.
If you're enjoying the content, I hope it's not too much to ask that you like, follow, and even share this podcast with someone who you think might find it beneficial. Let's jump right back into the show.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're smiling about it. So it's like running on empty, right? I view life as energy buckets. And you kind of just can't deplete them. You have to fill them back up, back to that mind, body, and spirit connection, and the spirit being those things that will make you feel good. The data is interesting, though. We could probably talk about a little bit about that, because sometimes it's harder, back to the conversation that we had earlier about patience and knowing when to go slow. It is one of the hardest things that I've actually had to do, because we always talked about burning the candles on both ends. It doesn't create anything that's actually helpful. I think a couple of years ago, there was a study just saying the people who break for lunch are productive in the much longer term, right? Because you have that recovery that happens in the middle of the day. It's, I think this coach Don Wethmo always talked about lunch as being your vacation in the middle of the day. So rest and recovery is important in the grand scheme, but also more so on a micro level. Looking out now, what advice you'd give your younger self?
Advice would be, do your best not to think everything.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I thought I knew everything then when I was younger. And I made some wrong moves that were very costly for me. And for, I'll say it for relationships too. Yeah. I can remember my martial arts instructor said to me, he says, it's not the other person's responsibility for your behavior. It's yours.
Wow.
It's understanding you have to be committed. You have to own, excuse my language, folks, you got to own your shit. Got to own it. Got to be responsible for it to drive your own excellence for where you are and where you are in your life. That is super critical. So commitment, ownership, responsibility, excellence, which is the core of the person.
Say that again. That's actually really,
Thank you.
That's actually really, really good.
So core, I would call it the core concepts of my program is commitment. Got to be committed. And if you're not committed, you can't own it. So ownership is number 2. Being responsible on having the ability and accountability to do something. So that level of responsibility is extra critical. And then excellence. It's being where you are and feeling comfortable where you are. It's everybody has a level of excellence that they can strive for. So it's the core concepts of being.
Just a little bit better than you were yesterday.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that is awesome. I'm reflecting as I go through it, and it sometimes stops me from getting to the next part of it. But so the part that excites me like tremendously is the EQI work, right?
Let's go into that. Absolutely.
And let's talk about, so I didn't know that you went as far back as 2003.
Yeah.
But and I did your last assessment, what insights was the first one that you actually gotten?
Reality testing.
So I see reality testing as the ability to remain objective by seeing things as they really are, or trying to see things as they really are. And a big part of it, which I'm sure will dovetail over into your EQI work, it's having a capacity to recognize your emotions when emotions or personal biases can actually get in your way and make you less objective.
Remember what we talked about saying that I always thought I knew everything? Yeah. I was a pie in the sky kind of guy. Always looking pie at the sky, but never really down to the weeds at some levels where I needed to be at some points. Because I was a big thinker, huge thinker. And I think, in truth, I think it was good for me at that level of building my business because I needed to be, is how do I create something that's so unique and so different that I have to think big? And I'll go back. So my partner, Lucia D'Angelo, her and I, Coach John, this is so unique. Coach John put together our EQIs, and where I'm strong, she's weak, and where she's strong, I'm weak. So that's why we get along very well, which is so cool.
But that's still having the awareness that's your strength and weaknesses. Yeah. So we often talk about teamwork, but if you don't understand what your strengths are or what someone else's weaknesses are, you'll just be frustrated all the time. Correct. And you don't necessarily understand how to supplement the shortcomings, correct, if you will. And it's not shortcomings, it's gaps that a teammate would actually fill. I go back to playing soccer. We all have a specific role to play on the team. And for us to do well as a team, we all have to thrive on a specific role. So you had your EQI and then you geared it to your business partner.
Yep, absolutely, okay. Absolutely. And we could see exactly how powerful the tool is and how well we work together. And it's very clear. It's super clear. Because when you look at my reality test, and it hovers around 93, 95-ish for the duration. I think on my last EQI, it was a little over 100, I think it was.
Yeah.
So I'm gaining on it. Because I think right now I've gotten to a point where Lucia and I have come to an understanding in our business where the pie in the sky is not there anymore. We know exactly what we're doing and where we're going with our business. So I'm not as pie in the sky anymore. So we're both very equal in our understanding of the business, which actually does well for me off the bike and out of the business, that I can look at things more objectively, as you said in the earlier part of the conversation in reality testing, that I can look at things more holistically in
the interpersonal relationship portion of it. So we always have someone who knows a little bit more than us in one session. Yep. So I know I asked you questions, like if you're interacting, I would ask questions up the wazoo. You probably hated it at first, but I would want to understand. But you came back and asked me questions because like I had a different acumen. So you would always try to tap into my thinking. And I still remember when you were thinking about your last revision of the business model in 2017 or 2018.
Yeah, 2017.
Yeah, I was sitting in my apartment in Jakarta and we were having that conversation. But I like that you took the information in, and then I got a note from you later on. Thank you, because you took it and you implemented it, right?
Yeah.
It's like that willingness to learn, but not just from you seeking it out, but relying and leaning on others. I think that's, from myself, that's one of the things that asking for help, but asking for the people around me is one thing that comes up often.
Yeah, because I trust you. I trust what you come from, a cloth of knowledge. And
thank you.
You're welcome. And it's the truth. You're an incredible person. I saw that in you the first time you and I trained in the park. Your mindset when you're thinking, you can see it. You can see it in your actions. Your very mind, which is a lot of people don't have. And I've coached a lot of people. And that skill, a lot of people don't have that skill to be mindful because they're all over the place.
Yeah.
Hence the reason why they want coaches, which they should. I'm a coach, but I have a coach too. I have mentors too, to keep me straight, keep me moving in the right direction. I think what I value what you do and how you present yourself, and how you say this all the time, how you show up, is you're positive the way that you show up every single time. So why wouldn't I want to listen to what you say? So my mentor says this to me all the time, Nick Johnson. He says to me, keep or toss. I always keep, because what he says to me, he's coming from an area of knowledge and understanding, and would only share the best intentions for me.
You're now thinking of taking your experience with EQI and incorporating it or integrated it into how you coach your athletes. And that's something that's differentiated.
Absolutely.
Because it's two things. It drives awareness from the coaching perspective, and it drives awareness from the athlete's perspective. Yep. It's one of those instances where you can get two people who are of a cut of a very different cloth to perform at their best if you understand them and they understand themselves. Can you share how you see that as
Absolutely.
integrating it into performance coaching? Because you've been on this mission then for almost 20 years, right?
Absolutely.
So how do you see that interplay?
Yeah. Let's go right to it. We call it coaching the whole athlete. Okay. So when I created this business, CIS Training Systems, I had the mindset, because what was actually happening in 2008, 2009 was the downturn of the economy. Remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. And I was consulting. So as you introduced me, I'm a thought leader in DEI space. So I was doing diversity work as an HR and diversity executive for many organizations, Major League Baseball, Catholic Charities, Boston Hospital, all these locations. But the downturn of the economy, I had to make a choice. So what am I going to do? What skills do I have to bring to the market that people need? Cycling is one of them. Mm-hmm. So I utilize cycling as the vehicle for change for individuals, because everybody's going to ride their bicycle. That's where we come from. So when I created the business in that mindset, I'm like, okay, look at all the tools that I have in my privy. EQI is one of them. If I know how my client behaves and their emotional state, and I know what mine is, I'm going to help them better because I could see it. Because I've had experience as with my EQI coach, John, and you as well, is to understand, how do I show up and how can I share that with somebody else, and how they can share back with me. So where we are right now in our businesses, I think it's next level. So this EQI and sports and this connection between the two, we see it as a very holistic approach to it, where we can say, all right, from the start, from the time that a person gets on the program, to give them the opportunity to say, hey, you know what? Let's take an EQI assessment. Let's see where your numbers are. Let's get a baseline. What's the mind going? How to relate? How do you behave? And there's certain areas within the EQI that we can see that from a data-driven perspective and approach that helps coaches to do what they do best.
So you've been at this for 20 years.
Yep.
And you've always been ahead of the curve. So how are you integrating EQI into your training program now? I shouldn't say program, system.
It's a system.
So I think that's a better depiction of it. So how do you integrate it into your system?
Majority of programs have baseline testing. We always go through that. What's your baseline numbers? What's your heart rate? What's your cadence? What's your FTP number? But what about the mental FTP number? How are you emotionally going through this process? So what I see the connection between EQI and training is the total connection between the two. So we utilize this holistic approach to it, coaching the whole athlete to be a leader in the space, to show here's the value of a tool that's used in a corporate setting, because it's about the individual, right? It's about the individual. So how do we take that skill set and that understanding of what we see within the data-driven approach and apply it to a baseline approach, which gives us the ability to leverage ourselves above many that are out in the space, I believe, that just sets us apart. I think it just sets us apart.
That's actually really cool. And I think you have one life. Yep. You don't have, and it's sad to say we don't have a professional life and a personal life, but I view it as we only have one life. And how do you optimize the best in both places? So that's actually, I love the coaching, the whole athlete concept.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Because it's not, I think it's talked about, but then having that data-driven way of actually talking about it is something that's very different.
Right. So I'll explain it. And it's very simple, but it's very complex to implement.
Simple, but not simplistic.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's taken many years to get it to this point. I would have to say 9 years to get it to this point, 10 years. So we all know heart rate training. We all know it. We all know that's the most important muscle in our body. We get that concept. Before power meters were even available, heart rate training was but I think a lot of times, a lot of programs have gotten away from heart rate training because they just want to go to power, but they don't see the importance of heart rate because it is the most important muscle in the body. So we truly focus on that from a general training perspective. These, like when you said skills acquisition, that's one of the skill acquisition is how do you manage and focus on heart rate control. Remember the drive, focus, and confidence that we talked about earlier? That focus is understanding, people say, I can't keep my heart rate in check. No, you focus on it. I don't care how fast you go. If you have to go slow, if you have to walk, get to it and understand how it's important for your body. So that's the first level. So the second level is we talk FTP. So I think
FTP for the non-bikers, like cyclists.
Functional threshold power.
Yeah.
It's where the amount of power you can produce and the rate at which your body utilizes sugar as fuel. That's where that combination, that connection happens.
The test to get to that number is a disgusting test.
Oh, it's hard. However, I wrote an article about it, about how to actually do a FTP test efficiently and effectively and over again. So actually, if you look on your right-hand side, Nigel, that's the article right there. Okay. Anyway, but the third piece is when we say coach the whole athlete is we're adding the EQI to it. So it's not just a heart rate training, FTP training. We're putting all the holistic components in it and adding EQI on top of it to really show what's the value from a data-driven perspective and how the athlete is showing up all the time.
I like that because, again, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And there are going to be, through the podcast, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I try to be consistently consistent with my messaging, but that's differentiated. And I think self-leadership is really important through each experience. And the EQI portion of it is like back to that know thyself commentary. That's the big one, right? Like it's important to get to that point. And David, man, thank you so much. I thoroughly
One more thing. I think one more thing, I need to share this with you. So think about it from an executive standpoint, like executive coaching and EQI executive coaching. Executives might not be athletes. Some of them are, some of them aren't. However, the bike is the vehicle for them to find the energy to be strong leaders. So when you think about EQI, it's if that energy, being a leader is not there, you see it in the data. You see it in the data of how are they showing up and utilizing this two-pronged approach that says, okay, let's train the body. Let's train the body. Like martial arts, same thing. Let's train the body, become more physically fit, get to that point because there's energy that you have to put out in the organization to drive change. And that goes back to my DEI mindset is if we're not doing the best we can from a strategy perspective or energy perspective and putting it out in an organization, that energy is going away. Where's it going?
I love that analogy.
Thank you.
Because a lot of what we do, you can actually create your own energy.
Yep.
You can, and that energy can always move you closer to whatever goals
Correct.
that you have for yourself.
Correct.
Again, back to that same and being just a little bit better every day, right? Consistently. David, thank you so much.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate your vulnerability, you sharing deeply and personally with us. Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.
So the key aspects of this conversation that's stayed with me is that it's very important to mind your mindset, because mindset is everything. Also, practice. The things that you do day in and day out, every day, it's okay to have insights. It's okay to have new information, but to embed it, to ingrain it in your psyche, in your physical being, it is something that you would have to practice every day. And then also, I think those concepts to make you just a little bit better than you are yesterday, commitment, ownership, accountability, responsibility, and then just striving for excellence. Those are the things that I think resonated with me and are still buzzing in my head since the conversation. Thank you for your time and then mental energy. I appreciate you if you were able to follow all the way through. I appreciate you taking the time to hear this conversation. If there's something that resonates with you, if there's a way to comment, if you can actually share it with me, that would be really helpful. And I look forward to you joining again for the next conversation in about 2 weeks or so. Up next is John Hughes, my EQI guru, and I'm super excited to share that conversation with you as well. Until then, take good care.